so much. Are we good? Thank you all so much for speak. And I'd like to say good afternoon to the students and faculty of the University of the District of Columbia, and especially Dr. Jillian Went for inviting me to give this talk today. And I would just like to share with you guys a bit about my journey in STEM. You heard a lot about, what I've done, but there's some background to what it is I've done. Basically, me being, setting goals and working towards achieving those goals, regardless of whatever obstacles I have faced. And I hope that my journey will inspire some of you out there to, see your obstacles and not deter or run away from your goals, but actually to sink in and actually achieve your goals. And so, as Dr. Went mentioned, I'm currently a biomedical life scientist with Leidos, where I work for the Department of Defense's U.S. Army Medical Research and Material Command. And my time within Leidos, so that's what I do, so that's my customer focus, that's what I get paid to do. But for me, I always had this desire to give back and to contribute to my community in more than just my job function. And so that's one of the reasons why I became a founder and a chair of the African American Leidos Network Employee Resource Groups. And as you guys enter into the workforce, I want you guys to be cognizant of the fact that employee resource groups are wonderful resources for employees within an organization. So like with a company like Leidos, which is 33,000 people, the minority population is kind of small, well, it's like 10%, if you will, of them. And so to have a group of people that have similar backgrounds and similar interests as you, it's very comforting, and you can get the opportunity to celebrate your culture. It's a very comforting thing within an organization of like 33,000 people, where you may not see people that look like yourself on a day-to-day basis. So it's good to have that connection. And when I realized that we didn't have one, me and a couple of my colleagues got together and we said, okay, we must actually do this so that we can create a better environment for our fellow employees. And in addition to that, working with the Howard University Strategic University Alliance, that's really a wonderful thing for me to do, to give back to Howard and actually to engage with students. Actually, we focus on the School of Engineering. We're trying to recruit computer scientists, and also cybersecurity experts within Howard to come to Leidos and contribute their skills and expertise to our scientific core. I want to talk today a bit about what my journey has been and actually how I got there. And to be honest, when I was first asked to give this talk, I was a little nervous because I really haven't done much, or I felt like I hadn't done much in my you just do. You know what I mean? You just do, and you really don't look back. And it wasn't until she was reading, actually. I was like, oh my God, I did all that. So I thought that was, I was quite impressed with myself. But luckily, what I had was a wonderful group of family and friends that encouraged me to share my experience. And they said, you must do it. So that's what it was. So that's why I'm here today. And I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for all of your help. And so throughout my presentation, I not only want to share my experience, I also want to share some facts and figures about women in STEM. At first, my title was Women of Color in STEM. Don't talk about it, be about it. But when you start to look at the numbers, it's really women in general. It's not even a minority issue, it's just women. And so I just changed it to Women in STEM, don't talk about it, be about it. And I know there are males in this audience, and I don't want to bash men or anything like that. I just want you to understand what women actually go through. Being a woman and, trying to make their mark in a field where people may doubt you. it can be pretty challenging. So this is in no way an attempt to say, men have been oppressing women. It's just an attempt to say, hey, this is what we're going through, so that going into your career, this is what you're up against. But regardless of that, you must still persevere, and anybody deter you from your goal. And in addition to that, and so some of you might ask, like, why the title, Don't Talk About It, Be About It. For me, that's a mantra in my life. I said I wanted to be a scientist, and I said I wanted to get my PhD, and I set a goal, and no matter what anybody said, no matter what happened, I achieved my goal. And in addition to that, I broadened my understanding of what the sciences are, like what it means to be a scientist. It doesn't mean you look straight, into just being in the lab or doing that one job. It actually means you broaden it and you see so for me, being a benchtop scientist, it's not only working on this one project, on manganese superoxide dismutase, or on HMGA1 protein. It's actually seeing where that goes. So if I find an interesting finding, how do I get from the bench to the bedside? And not necessarily to say that I have to do that, but it's an understanding, because it gives a greater amount of pride in your work, because you're saying you can actually impact people's lives. And for me, I like to know, like, the big picture. I'm kind of like a big picture person, if you will. So I like from the beginning to the end, and I like to deep dive in things that I am interested in. And so for me, and so that's the background for my Don't Talk About It, Be About It. So if you're saying you're a scientist, well, what are you doing in addition to the science that you do in your lab? How are you understanding the big picture of what it is you're doing, of what you're doing in science? And so for me, that's it. And so throughout this presentation, I'm going to give you guys just a few facts and also some nuggets, along with some stories of my life that will hopefully be entertaining for you guys. And so these facts actually came from, the first of them, all of the facts came from the National Science Foundation's study, where they saw that female students' achievements in math and science are similar to those of males during K to 12, and they participate in higher level mathematics and science courses at similar rates as their male peers, with the exception of computer science and engineering. Now you might ask, well, why is that? Well, some of that may be because that's what men are generally, or boys are generally pushed towards, the math and science, and girls are pushed towards different kinds of sciences. Well, that's something that we actually need to change if we're going to be competitive, actually, as a country, because everybody's on the playing field right now. The United States, we lead. If you look at how many journal articles are published by country, China is right there. I think we're like a 12,000 publication difference. So, I mean, and the country that publishes more could be considered the country that knows more, that's doing more. So then we start losing that race, so it's important. And the same is true for STEM education. They have the most computer scientists, they have the most engineers. Where would companies go? Possibly to those countries and not to the US. So we have to really keep that in mind, and we need all hands on deck right here. Oops, that is not correct. Okay, and so let me start in the beginning. So from a young age, it was instilled in me by my grandmother and my mother that education was important. I remember they would always tell me, education is a key. What is it? Education is a possession of which no man can be robbed. And boy, were they correct with that statement. And so before I get into my story, I really get into my story, I just like to ask, like, when some of you in the room were in 3rd grade, did you know how far you wanted to go education-wise? Did you have any clue what you wanted to do education-wise? Did you? Did you know you had to, what did you want to? Okay, but the question becomes, did you know what it took to be a mad scientist? Did you know you needed a master's degree or a PhD or anything like that? Scientist, why not? Just like I want to be Chucky, why not? When I grow up. But, you just didn't know. Well, I'll tell you, for me, when I was in the 3rd grade, one of my teachers, she asked the class, she started asking, I don't know how this conversation came up, but she was asking us, like, how far do you guys want to go in school? And she was like, high school, you want to get an associate's degree, a master's degree, and all the kids in the class, raising their hands, yeah, I want to do that, I want to do that. And I was like, I don't know what any of that means. So given what I had been told in my household by my family, I said, well, what's the highest you can go? How far can you go? And she said, a PhD is the highest you can go. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'll just go and get the PhD, having no idea what that entailed. And it's interesting because during that same time, like in elementary school, one summer I had the great idea of wanting to find out what plants and animals were in my community. So I went about the business of collecting jars from our candy lady in the neighborhood, and getting these jars and filling them with all kinds of little animals and critters in my yard. So I had frogs, I had earthworms, I had little bugs, I had everything, and I would just collect and observe them. My own community was my first laboratory. As a scientist, that was my first laboratory. Until my mother started smelling my little bugs, and things started dying because I didn't really know. It's funny? My great aunt told me to feed my turtles bread. No. And then when they died, she was like, oh. Them bread and stuff like that. But that was my first experience in science. But little did I know, I was actually developing I would be honing those skills later on in my life. So that just brings me to my first nugget, to never be afraid to speak your dreams. Because I can't help but think that in the 3rd grade, not knowing what a PhD meant, what really science was, I said I wanted to get a PhD, which I guess the stars said, well, then that means you want to be a scientist. And so for me, I would implore all of you to please never be afraid to speak your dreams. If you want it, you put it out there in the universe, you work hard, and you can achieve it. And so, like some of you that may be in the room, I didn't grow up in the best conditions. Like, my mother didn't graduate from high school, and my father wasn't in the picture when I was growing up. So I learned a lot of things the hard way. But I can't help but think that all of those lessons that I learned, those hardships that I went through, those are the things that gave me the grit to achieve my goals. And so I would hope, and I would tell you guys, that even though you may have adversities and things may not be perfect in your life, to continue to move forward towards your own goals. And so, moving on in my education. So throughout primary and secondary schooling, I was always picked for advanced placement classes. So, I kind of knew I was smart and modest. And I decided in like 7th, 8th grade or so that I wanted to go to college. I said, I'm smart. Why do I need to, I should go to college. It'll be fun. But you know what really pushed it over the line for me? It was the Cosby effect. It was watching the Cosby Show in a different world. And I saw that and I was like, nah, this is me. I was like, that's the life I want. That is the experience that I want in life. But just because you're smart doesn't always mean that, doesn't equate to money, right? To find, having the finances to do things. And so the quest became, how do you finance this thing? And so I asked some teachers and other folks, how do I get, money to go to college? And this was high school. So I was getting ready for the, you need to make good grades all throughout because that's what college is going to look for. And then they were like, well, you should join ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps. And the school I was going to go to had Air Force Junior ROTC. And then they told me, the military, if you go in the military, they'll pay for college. And for every year that you do an ROTC in high school, you'll get an increase in rank. And that was speaking to me. So if I had to go in the military, I wouldn't start off at the bottom. That's never good. And so I said, you know what? I'll join ROTC. And so the first year I joined ROTC, it was a lot of fun. I learned about the military. I gained a greater respect for the men and women of the United States military. And I think that that really has a lot to do with why I enjoy my job, why I enjoy, supporting our troops. And so my first year of ROTC was amazing. My second year, I was actually chosen to attend the Cadet Officer Leadership School, which is a week-long immersion course so basically it was on the Air Force Base in Charleston, South Carolina, where I'm from, and you got to really experience life in the military. And that was a reality check for me, because I was like, what I thought was going to be fun and exciting, no. It takes, it takes real commitment, it takes real grit. And I started thinking, oh, I might need to start working on a plan B, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And it wasn't until my third year in ROTC where we went off with some Army Rangers into the wilderness. We were in the wilderness, and they were teaching us survival skills. So Air Force Rangers, I'm sorry. They were teaching us survival skills. And they, had us in pontoons, sitting on the ground, saying this is how you keep warm. They were picking plants from trees and showing us how to, like, the plant was toxic or whatever. So you put it on your gum and then you wait for a couple hours. I'm like, but what if I'm hungry now? I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. And it wasn't until my fellow cadets who were hardcore, I think all of them, that group, went into the military. I didn't go. But they were eating insects. Because, as a scientist, I understand it now. Pound for pound, insects have more protein than meat, right? So it was perfectly fine for them to eat. But they were eating ants and things like that. And I was like, oh, wow. I really need to work on my plan B. And so I completed my third year, and I ultimately did enjoy the ROTC. It did teach me discipline. It taught me, it taught me a lot of things. But I started working on Plan B during my senior year, and Plan B was going to be trying to find some money to go to college. And so, as I said, I was always a good student. So, but that didn't always equate to money. And so I started applying to all these colleges my senior year, and oh, you know what? Actually, I forgot my nugget from that story. You know what my nugget is for that story? Suck it up, little soldier. Which is what I had to do. I had to suck it up with the things that I liked about being in ROTC and the things that I didn't like about being in ROTC. I had a goal, and I had to achieve it. And suck it up and keep it moving. And you will find that even in your career, everybody doesn't love everybody that they work with, right? It isn't always pleasant, right? But you have a job, you have responsibilities, so it's important that so keep that in mind. Suck it up, little soldier, and keep it moving. And this brings me to my next, so during my senior year in high school, what happened was I started applying for all these various colleges, but I wasn't getting any money, which is always a problem. And so one day, I wasn't even going to tell this story, but why not, right? I remember I was getting a T-shirt, because we would get T-shirts like every 9 weeks, every quarter for like good grades and all this stuff. And I would always get a T-shirt. I would always get a T-shirt. And one of the administrators at the school would always see me. We started talking about, what my plans were for the future. I guess he was like, okay, well, she's smart. She's always getting these T-shirts, so why not? And he gave me a form after we were talking, and I was telling him, I want to go to college, and, but I need money. He gave me some forms. He told me to fill them out, and I filled them out. And I don't know how long after, but it was like the end of senior year, and I was like, oh God, I'm gonna have to go in the military. This is what's gonna have to happen. I got a thick envelope in the mail, and it was a full 4-year academic scholarship to Claflin University. I was like, thank you, God. I don't have to go into the military. But this is in no way bashing the military. I totally respect them, but I know I wasn't built for it. I was not built for it. But this also brings me to nugget number 2, because these are things that, I personally would have to face. Minorities in STEM and women in STEM will have to face as they progress through their career. So the rates of science and engineering courses taken for girls and women shift at the undergraduate, and gender disparities begin to emerge. So it's an opportunity to keep in mind that there are going to be obstacles you face as you get deeper into the sciences and you try to make your mark. There are going to be naysayers, but you still have to keep it going. We need to reverse this stuff. And so when I went to Claflin, I graduated. I didn't graduate, not yet. I majored in biology and chemistry. And like a lot of students, a lot of ambitious students, I did internships every summer. I did one at the in marine biology. I did one in microbiology and molecular biology, and actually in the Drosophila melanogaster model system. And so after undergraduate school, I was recruited to Dr. Dutteroy's lab at Howard University. And like any good scientist, I went to meetings every year and presented my work. But one of the most interesting opportunities that I had during grad school was attending the Marine Biological Laboratories Biology of Aging course in 2005. And this was a great opportunity for me to learn about aging from the best and brightest in the field. And I also got the opportunity to hear my first Nobel laureate talk, and that was from Linda Buck. She got the Nobel Prize with Richard Axel, in mapping the olfactory process from the nose to the brain. So actually they mapped the process of smell. So I thought that was like totally cool. I was like, oh my God, I'm at MBL and I'm listening to a Nobel laureate. My life is awesome. And also, but during that time, I was also thinking like, is the lab it? What else happens outside of the lab? So I wanted a different kind of experience. And I had always had an interest in biotechnology. And so I applied for the for the Minority and Indigenous Fellows Program, which was sponsored by Amgen. That I have there for you guys to take with you. And this was an opportunity for me to learn about actually the business of science, because people aren't doing research in the lab just for the sake of research. There are people out there that want to make money on the findings of from all this research that's being done. And going to the biotech industry organization's annual meeting, I learned what all that was about. You had people walking around there. Everybody had a molecule or something that they wanted to develop, and they wanted $1 billion. That's what they were looking for. And I was like, oh, so this is what happens to all that work. And so that really opened my eyes to the broad picture of science and how it actually impacts lives, right? You see all these articles in, Cell, Science, and Nature, but how does that impact people's lives? And it's these organizations these types of organizations that, take technologies from the bench to the bedside. And so that was really an eye-opener for me. So at the conclusion of graduate school, I went to work with Dr. Linda Resar at Johns Hopkins, and that, again, was a great opportunity. I got to postdoc at one of the best universities in the country, and I took advantage of every opportunity that became available to me while I was there. I published, and I, made friends with a lot of great people. and learned a whole lot. But then what happened was, I was like, do I want the lab to be, my entire life? Because when you get to be a postdoc, you see really how life is. You see really the grind of having to look for money. And it is a grind, and you have to be passionate about the work that you're doing. But for me, I wanted to see, again, I had this passion about, industry and what else was out there. And so I joined the organization Women in Bio. And Women in Bio is a great organization for students. And I actually have some information on these slides for you guys. So Women in Bio is a great organization because it supports women from middle school, right? We have these issues with middle school girls not really being exposed to science, all the way up to late career stage women. I spent 5 years in Women in Bio. I learned how to network. I connected with so many people in the state of Maryland. Learned about so many different opportunities in the state of Maryland. It was a wonderful experience. And when I came in, it was kind of like baptism by fire a bit, because I came in and I was like, okay, well, I'll be a member and do all that stuff. And they were like, hey, have you ever raised money before? And I was like, I did it in undergrad, for the school. And so and I was like, okay. And 2 months later, I was the chair of sponsorship. And I was pulling in the money, yes I was. And so at the end of my first 9 months or so, they were like, hey, you want to be vice president of the chapter in the coming year. So I spent 2 years as the vice president of the Washington, D.C., Baltimore chapter of Women in Bio. And it was an amazing experience. I would implore all of the women and men, we like men in Women in Bio, in here to just go and research Women in Bio and see the great things that they do. They have a lot of awesome networking opportunities. And what I liked about Women in Bio is it brought me around women at various levels and various places in science. And I got to see what they were doing versus what I was doing, what they had done versus what I had done. So it was kind of like, outside of what you and your peers do at UDC, right? So you're seeing what students at Georgetown do. You're seeing what students at Hopkins do everywhere. And it's all virtually go to places except when they have events. So it's a great opportunity to be and to network and to be like, I absolutely loved my experience at Women in Bio, and eventually I became the president. I led that organization, loved every minute of it, still support that organization, and so I would implore everyone in here to just Google Women in Bio and see the amazing things that they're doing. And also while I was during my postdoc, I did a year-long Activate program, which was actually funded by the National Science Foundation. And it was an opportunity for high-tech women in technology to learn entrepreneurship and learn everything they need to do to take a technology from basically from and how to find out what resources are available within the community to help you along the way in doing that. The Activate program doesn't exist anymore. Actually, it was like Activate and then Innovate programs, but they're not funded anymore. But it was a wonderful program, and there are still programs out there that want to support entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is big in Maryland and in a lot of states because entrepreneurs actually they employ people. So there are lots of grants, and I would advise you to look up Maryland TEDCO, Technology Development Corporation. That's a great Maryland TEDCO, TEDCO. They actually have a pre-seed funding program for minorities. They give out, I think it's like 20 awards per year to support minority businesses, and they do it for all. They have like some for large-scale businesses. It's like everything. Did you guys know that in Baltimore City there's going to be a cyber town? So in the Port Covington area, they're trying to get companies actually the Port Covington area the president of Under Armour. And so they're developing what's going to be called Cybertown. So they're trying to recruit a bunch of cybersecurity companies to come to the Baltimore area. And then there's a new building coming up by the FDA in White Oak. There was just a groundbreaking. Telling you, there's like so much going on. It's just, you just have to get out there and then expose yourself, and you will see just everything that's around you, and a lot of things that you can just easily touch. And so that brings me to my third nugget, which is to diversify your experiences. If you see things that you find out about it, keep on finding out about it until you don't like it anymore. Until you hit that road, until you hit that brick wall, it's like, okay, I think I see why this won't work. But I always do a deep dive. If I'm interested in something, I'm gonna and meet people, connect with people, work with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is awesome. I wasn't even gonna talk about that. LinkedIn is awesome. It's just good. Get your profile. If you see somebody that you think is interesting, reach out to them. Send them a note, though. Don't just do random stuff, because, you can get in trouble for that. But just send them a note. Say, hey, you have some interests that similar interest in me. Can we connect? And then send them if they accept, that's wonderful. And then you can send them a note and then, talk to them. And I've done that. I do that. Because I feel like you may have the information that I need. And so, be kind. And so, after my postdoc, I actually decided I wanted to go into industry. And it's crazy because I work for a government contractor, Leidos. We're like a big 33 IT firm. And I truly believe that they wanted me to, at least that's what I choose to believe, they wanted me to do the Howard Leidos Strategic University Alliance thing, because they saw how connected I was and how I was in the community. And not based on anything I said, but based on what they could see from what I was doing and what I was involved in and what was on my resume. And so to be at a big IT company, the Strategic University Alliance is for recruiting engineers. And so I was like, why did they choose me? You know what I mean? But we're actually connected. We're trying to bring in students. We're engaging. We're supporting research there, and that's all because of me. And that's an accomplishment that I can say that I brought to a big 33,000, $10 billion IT behemoth. That was my little piece, but it's because I decided that I was going to be fearless, and I wasn't going to allow the fact that I'm a molecular biologist stopped me from doing something awesome. Why would I do that? And so I would just implore all of you to take opportunities by the horn. But I also want to share with you guys some statistics. And so one of the interesting statistics that I found was that women have earned 57% of all the bachelor's degrees and about half of all the science and engineering bachelor's degrees since the 1990s. So why is there still such a small percentage of women? And we also are 24% of the, we're actually half of the internet users, but we only represent 24% of the people in the computing space. Can you imagine how much better the internet would be if more women, and how much further this country would be if we just allowed women, to be ambitious, to be brilliant, to be to be their full selves. And that's honestly what my efforts are. I want there to be a day when you can be your full self. You can say something outrageous and you can do it. And nobody's going to look at you and say, women don't do that. Ha! Yes, they do. In fact, we have Ms. Katherine Johnson, right? From Hidden Figures. Who knew? Who knew that she was that mathematician? Can you imagine if she was allowed to be her full self? What she could have accomplished? We would have already been on Mars. We might have been on Mars 10 or 20 years before, we have Miss Mae Jemison. And I truly believe that with Katherine Johnson's work, paved the way in a way for Mae Jemison to be the first African-American woman to go into outer space many, many years later. And then we have Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook. I love her because she has a website, leanin.org, where she's saying some of the same things I'm saying. Women need to lean in. You hear these conversations that men are having, you need to be a part of them. You have ideas, you have thoughts, lean in. And I would advise you to go to leanin.org and sign up, because there are actually groups. And so that's a great opportunity to have like-minded people that are gonna push you. So when you may think, no, I don't wanna rock the boat, and they're like, rock it, why not? What do you have to lose? Kimberly Bryant, the founder of Black Girls Code. And actually, Black Girls Code now has an office on the 3rd floor of the Google building in New York, Google offices in New York City. So they're training young women from all over New York in computer science and coding. This just happened like last month or so. So there are women out there, and you know what inspired her? She went to Silicon Valley, and she didn't see very many people of color. Actually, I think it's like 1 or 2% when they put out the numbers. It's horrible. But she said she wanted to make a difference, compounded by the fact that her daughter came home, and her daughter, at like 11 years old, saw that the teachers were spending more time with the boys when it came to engineering than the girls. And so instead of her going to the school and saying this and saying that, she said, I'm going to do something about it. She didn't talk about it, right? She did something about it. And you can do the same thing. In fact, even with all these things that I'm saying, there's a financial piece to all of this. Because this country, so currently women make up 24% of the computing jobs, right? So by 2025, in order for us to be competitive and in order for us to be able to fulfill the job requirements, that number needs to be at 39%. With the rate that we're going now, it's going to be at 22%. So what's going to happen? So we need all hands on deck. We need all, and this is the sciences, period. This is not, I don't care if you're a biologist, chemist, computer scientist, engineer, we need all hands on deck. We need everybody's ingenuity. And if that means we need to break down some doors and make some people angry and uncomfortable, then we have to do that. We have to do it because, and you're looking, and when you think about that, when you make that decision, you have to think about the big picture. What is the big picture? So somebody may not like for you to do something, but they may not understand that there are people coming for us. They're coming for the #1 spot. And so we as a country need to really recognize that we need to get more people into STEMs. And so there are some ideas as to how to do that. And one of the things that was offered was to offer summer camps for girls, for young girls. And this could be for computer science, engineering camps, even for just basic science camps. Because they found that young girls, young middle school girls that attended summer camps were 81% more likely to want to major in science than the 51% that didn't. We could also train women who maybe weren't computer scientists in undergrad, train them in computer science, even get more people on deck and more people in the field. And then also inspire more young girls and treat them in supporting organizations that try to expose young girls to the sciences, and also support organizations that try to keep women in the sciences. Oh. And so I want to share with you guys a few web addresses. I think these slides are going to be, they can be made available, that's perfectly fine. So the International Center flyer on the table, they have SMDP Biotech and SMDP MedTech that's coming up next year. That's actually the That's the organization. That's my Minority and Indigenous Fellows program, actually, from back in the day. But they're still around. There are some wonderful opportunities there. If you get accepted, you get like paired with a mentor for a year. That's a great opportunity. So I would implore all of you to apply. And if you don't get in this year, just keep on applying. It'll be fine. And also Women in Bio. I would implore you to just go check out Women in Bio. And BEA, Black Engineer of the Year Award Conference. Has anybody ever been to BEA? How many engineers are in here? And you haven't been to BEA? Oh, you have to go. It'll be wonderful. We actually, Leidos recruits a lot at BEA. And actually, and it's basically a conference where companies can come and recruit students, and they offer like professional development opportunities as well. Oh, and also Black Girls Code. I would implore you all to, engage with Black Girls Code. And even if you are not a computer science or engineering student, you can still participate in Black Girls Code. Because coding, computer science pays good money. So, and it would be a good skill set to have. Good? So I just want to let you guys know that on Saturday, November 10th, the DC chapter of Black Girls Code is having an event. But you might see me there, just to find out like exactly what that is. Like, do you guys know what a Raspberry Pi is? Right, I didn't know what that was. It's like a little computer. That's cool. Like, I don't know how to build one or anything like that, but it doesn't matter. I still know what it is. And so I would implore all of you to check it out. Possibly come out, you'll learn something. You can help the kids, inspire the kids. Good. And so that actually ends it for me. I just want to leave you guys with those nuggets. I hope you guys enjoyed my discussion and my journey in STEM. The saga continues. I don't know what's coming up next, but I'm sure it'll be exciting. And so if you guys have any questions or anything like that, please. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry. Yes.
Office, and she blew it. And she said, Professor Picasso, I wish I had never listened to people who told me that because I was in IT or in engineering, I didn't need to know how to write paper. So I think it's a point that, probably you can make better than I can make, because I think me and Mr. Professor are worn out. Going somewhere. It's not giving the students who need to be able to hear. So did you like to elaborate on that?
She is correct. It's a matter, for me, it's a matter to be able to convey my thoughts properly and to get my point across. So being able to write, at work, we do talk about people that can't write. Honestly, I'm telling you, we do. We do talk about people that don't write, and you will get known for that. Like, I've heard that as well, and that just doesn't resonate with me. Just like, somebody may have said, well, you're a good technical writer, but you're not a good, layperson writer. I can do both. So, and I think that's a reasonable thing to assume, that you can be, no matter the situation, you should be able to get your point across. I would not agree with that at all, especially in this day and age, because I'm telling you, it's all hands on deck We need to be able to do like everything, because what you're not doing, believe me, somebody else is doing it. So you sit there and you're in the comfort of not being able to write. Who am I going to, who would I hire? You both have the same technical abilities, but who am I going to hire? Somebody who I don't have to like chase after, and I can go give a customer their document from the person that can write well, or I have to send it to editing and delay that process for the person that doesn't write well. And do you even understand what they're saying? Can they get their point across? So it's becoming, don't believe that. That's hype. Do not believe it. You need to be able to write. You need to be able to write well. I don't care what profession. You need to be able to write well. And technically, being able to write technically is great. I mean, you definitely should do that if you're in the sciences. But otherwise, you need to also be able to, what? I think it's good when you can write for the technical and also for the lay audiences. And I do, like before I did a lot of technical writing, but now I do a lot of lay writing. I can't use the big word manganese superoxide dismutase, A1 binding to the da-da-da receptor. No. You can't do that. You have to be able to, speak to where the general public can understand. Go ahead, sorry.
My name is Sheila, and I'm an urban sustainability major. So we've heard a lot about your accomplishments, and you're so happy that you're here to just share it with us. Are you able to kind of share a failure or a setback or something that happened in your life, and how you were able to bounce back from it, or a missed opportunity? And how you were able to bounce back from that.
I don't fail, actually.
Or missed opportunities or setback.
A missed opportunity. Have I had any missed opportunities? It's funny because the way that I see missed opportunities is, it wasn't meant for me. So I may have applied for a job that I thought was, you know what? I'll tell you this. So in my biography, you saw that I wrote for the Future of Biopharma, 2 articles on biologics and biosimilars. Right? Everybody know what biologics and biosimilars are. Everybody that knows me, they know what it is. So biologics, everybody has seen those commercials with, Herceptin and all these different monoclonal antibodies to treat various diseases, like whether it's, so those are what you would call innovator molecules. So those are like the aspirins of the world, right? Aspirin is aspirin. So those are the original molecules. Well, at some point, they lose their patent. And companies are then able to come in and develop them and sell them. Well, biologics is $1 billion industry. One biosimilar would bring in, like for Amgen, one biosimilar would bring in $9 billion annually. And so when this biosimilar goes off patent, like a Herceptin, once it goes off of patent, other people can enter the market. But what's interesting about biosimilars is they don't lose the value the way small molecules do. And I guess I should say this too. So imagine a biologic versus a drug is like comparing a B-52 bomber to a tricycle in size and in complexity. So with a drug, you put 2 chemicals together, boom, 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 you got aspirin. With a biologic, it's done in a living system. And you have to harvest it, and you have to do all stuff. So they're very expensive. So I was very interested in that market, and I was writing stuff. And I remember I had an interview. I actually went to New York for that interview. And I was gonna move to London. They had told me it was Decision Resource Group. And I got into the interview, and I froze. I lost my opportunity to go to London. And that, to me, was a missed opportunity. God, I thought I'd never tell that story in public. But anyway, it that's what happened. But I'm still interested in that market. I'm, I may develop my own. I may start my own biotech company. I have all that experience, right? I should speak that. I'm going to speak that into existence. So look out for me. No, I know. Yeah, I know. I know. Thank you, right? I'm like, no. It's actually motivation, right? So next time you guys see me somewhere, you'll be like, did you ever start that company you said you were going to start? And I'll be like, oh, God. So, okay.
I want to thank Dr. Belton so very much, and I don't want to stop the question and answer session, but I do want to open up the refreshments because I know it is lunchtime for most of you. So feel free to make your way over to the refreshments, but you may go ahead and continue with the question and answer session if you wish. So
Cool.
Thank you so much. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Awesome.
I should also mention, please take this time to network with one another and to start establishing these connections here. Because
Yes.
we have people from all over,
Yes.
visiting us today and around you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have your attention for just a moment? May I have your attention for just a moment? I want to introduce to you a colleague of mine, Dr. Otto Wilson. He is from Catholic University, and he has an announcement. He has something he wants to share.
Real quick, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the wonderful talk.
Thank you.
And everybody say December 11th. December 11th. I'm going to say December 11th. Okay. December 11th is going to be our DC STEM Network annual extravaganza. It's going to be at Gallaudet University from 8:30 to 2:30. So if you're interested, pretty much everybody or anybody in STEM is going to be there, and we kind of take an assessment about the state of STEM education in DC.
Yeah.
It's been a wonderful effort over the years, and I believe it's the fourth one. So if you can Google DC STEM Network, there's information about it, and also how you can register for it. That's